Hi there and welcome to this tutorial series. This is the first video. In this video we're going to be making this very simple spaceship and player movement, and it's limited to certain positions on the screen. Very simple and quick to set up using an Area 2D and changing positions. So let's get started. Alright, so let's get started with our project. So we've got Godot 4.13 to start with. And I'm just going to create myself a new project. Now I'm going to call mine shooter, just to be nice and simple, and click create folder so I can make an empty folder in the folder I'd like to make all my projects in. And one of the things I have changed is this compatibility mode, because I don't need all the fancy 3D graphics for Forward Plus, and I intend to export to the web platform. I'm just going to switch this to compatibility and it'll work perfectly fine. I just click create and edit. So I'm going to go fairly slow with this, just so that we can explain everything as we go. So basically I want to create myself a 2D scene. We can view this window in 2D and just ignore that 3D window for now. This is where we'll also see our scripts when we need to edit those. So if I click on this 2D view and create myself a first scene, I'm going to make a scene because we're going to have just one scene for our game just now. So I'm going to make a 2D scene that inherits from Node TD. And I'm just going to call this game, and I'll keep this all lowercase. So this is going to be the main game where we're going to put stuff. But I'm hoping that this isn't your first effort at making a Godot game. So I'm going to save this scene. So currently my resources are down here and I don't have any folders to save, and I'd quite like to be quite organized. So what I'm going to do is just right click down here and create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder scenes so that I can keep all my scenes in it. Now I've got this highlighted. I'm just going to save this scene. So I'm just going to go up to the scene view, click save scene, and then in the scenes folder I'm just going to click save that scene. So the scenes are going to go in here. There is only really the one. And we're going to create other scenes that are going to be the parts of this main scene. For example, the player, the enemies, and the lasers. So let's do the cool part. We're going to try and get in our assets now. So I went to Kenney.nl for this, and we're going to get this awesome free asset pack from Kenney. If you just click on assets right now in the Kenney asset pack, I'll put a link in the description as well. But I'm just going to search in here for space, and I've got this awesome space shooter Redux, and this is a pretty minimal package. And all we're going to do is download, and I highly recommend that you donate to Kenney. It's absolutely awesome, the stuff that he has got in there for absolutely nothing. So I'm just going to download this Kenney Space Shooter package, and you'll notice it's a zip file, and we can't put that straight into our Godot projects. So I'm just going to go to where it downloaded. I'm just going to extract it there. So I'm just going to say extract all, and just pop that in a folder inside that location. So I'll show you what it looks like. So this Space Shooter Redux folder right now in my downloads, all I'm going to do is just drag and drop this straight into my Godot project. So I'm just going to take this, go down here, and then pop it straight into my resources. Most of the time that will come in exactly as you expect, so it should come in as a folder inside the resources right there, and you'll see that there's a bunch of awesome cool sprites and things in here that we can use. These are all usable for our game, and there's some cool stuff in here as well, like audio and fonts as well that we'll use later on in the project. So we're going to start with our player. Now I'd like to be organized, and I'd like to make sure that I create a bunch of objects that we can use as scenes. So rather than just populate this main game scene, I'm going to create a bunch of prefabs from other scenes. I'm going to keep those organized and create another folder in here as well. This folder is going to be called prefabs, because I want to keep these pre-made scenes separate. So the things I'm talking about are the player and the lasers and the enemies. They're going to go in this prefabs folder. So let's just create our first new scene. I think we should start with the player. So I'm just going to click new scene. Now rather than make this a 2D scene, I'm going to choose the Area 2D node. If you click on other node up here and do a quick search for Area 2D, this Area 2D it tells me down here that this Area 2D is perfect for detecting collisions with other Area 2Ds and other objects. So I'm going to use that one because pretty much everything in this game is going to be made up of Area 2Ds because they're all going to have to detect collisions with each other. So I'm going to click Create right now and rename immediately this to Player. And you'll see that there's a little exclamation mark, which means that there is a problem. If you hover over it and read it, you'll see that it doesn't have a collision shape. We also can't see it. It's currently sitting just in the middle here, but we can't see it. So I'm going to add a sprite to that. So just right click, add a child, and click Sprite 2D. The Sprite 2D is where we can take our awesome sprites and put them into this texture here. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing this. The easiest way, I think, is to find it in the resources and drag it in. So I'm going to go to the PNG folder, and you'll see there's all these different player ships. I quite like the idea of having a blue ship, so I'm just going to choose this top level one, this one here, and just drag and drop it on. The other way that you can do it is to use the drop down, and you can do load, and then you can just find it by looking through it this way. Sometimes this is actually better because you get a bigger preview of it rather than trying to see it down here. But it really doesn't matter, either way will work. Once it's in there, you can see that it's pointing the wrong way. I'd like to have my sprites pointing to the right, and all I need to do that is to just change this transform. So this is just on the sprite, not the player. The player stays at a rotation of 0, if we look over here. The rotation 0, but the sprite we can rotate around. So click on the sprite and change the rotation to 90 degrees, and that should face it over here. I also think just a little bit too big. So my main screen here, this is the main screen that we can see with the purple-ish line. It kind of takes up too much of it. So I'm going to pretty much make everything half scale. So I'm going to say 0.5 for pretty much all the stuff on this game. So we'll scale all the sprites in and make them half scale. You'll see that it's also a bit still complaining about not having a collision shape. So if we hover over this, and all you need to do to create the collision shape is just add a child node, type in collision, and choose the collision shape 2D. The collision shape 2D requires that you choose which shape that it has. So you click on shape where it says empty, and you just choose one of the shapes. Now a rectangle shape is perfectly fine for me. I'm just going to drag these points up. So that this collision shape covers pretty much the whole of the spaceship. So that's pretty good, I think. That now is my main player. We're going to add a script to it in a second, but I just want to save it off now before I forget. So on the scene, I'm going to click Save Scene, and I'm going to choose the prefabs folder that we made earlier. So I'm just going to go with the up, go to Parent folder, so I don't want to save it in Scenes. I'm going to go up, choose prefabs, and click Save, and it should put it into the prefabs folder. Just to check, we'll go here, look in prefabs, and we see we have our player scene. So this workflow is really important inside of Godot. So I've got my player scene open, but I've got the game tab. This is the game scene as well, and it's really easy to add one of these pre-made items or scenes into one of the other scenes. This little chain thing here, this instantiates a child scene. So we can click on that and we can choose any of the prefabs that we want. So I'm just going to click player, and it just drops straight in. Now the cool thing about this is you'll see that you don't have all the children objects. You have this little clapperboard thing. If you click on this, it will open it up the scene so you can edit the prefab and make sure that the prefab does what it's supposed to do. So back into game again, I'm just going to save this again and just move the player down into position over about here in the middle and just make sure that we save it. So there's a couple of things we need to set up before we start on the coding. This horrible like dark grey colour, I want it to be a space game, so I'm actually want this to be black. So I'm going to go to the project settings. So up in the project panel, click project settings, and down under environment, under rendering, is where you'll find the default clear colour. So this is this horrible grey. I'm just going to drag it down till it's pretty much just off black. And then we can close, and you'll see that's changed this whole thing to black, and that works fine. We can still get the grid back if we need it, so that's sort of like a light grey, so we can still see that should we need it. The next thing that we probably want to do is we want to start writing the scripts to make this this move, and that's not as hard as it seems. Alright, so we're going to go to the clapperboard here so that we're opening up the player scene. you can just click on the tab as well. And we're going to add the script to that. Before I do that, I really want to be organized, as I mentioned before, so I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call that one scripts. That's where I'm going to put all my scripts, funnily enough. So on the player, just click this little attach a new or existing script, and then I don't want to store it in the prefabs folder. I'm going to click on this folder, click up again, choose scripts, and then it's okay to call it player. I think that's a pretty good name for the player script. So we'll just click open and create, and that will create that script for us, and we'll be ready to start coding. Alright, so we're going to write the script for this player now. So I want to make sure that I am going to do this inside the prefab, inside the actual player scene. So I'm going to click on the clapperboard, and we're going to add the script onto here. Now, one of the things that you'll need to do is when your projects get big, you need to be organized. So again, I'm going to make a new folder, and this one's going to hold my scripts. So I think it'd be a good idea to call it scripts. And then that's where I'm going to add this script when I add it into my player. So clicking on player, and then click this plus to add the script. Now, to change the location where it's going to put it, I'll just hit this little folder up here, and then go up again and into the scripts folder, and then click open. And then we'll click create. Now the default method for this is to not have type hints. Some people prefer the type hints, but this is just the standard vanilla Godot without any changes to it. So we'll go and write some code for this and try and keep it as simple as we can possibly make it. What we want to actually do, if we look in the game here, what we want to do is, to begin with, we just want to move this player up and down. And you can see here that all that scripts really do is change some of the properties of the object or the children parts of that object. So this object right here, you can see if I move it up and down, you can see the Y value right here. You can see that Y value change. So it's going to go till about, I don't know, about 600 down there, and I want it to go to about 50 or so up here. But I just want to be able to use keys to move that up and down. And if you've done this before, you probably realize that we'll need some actions to use. So there are some default ones, but I want to set my own up. So under project and project settings, I'm going to go onto input map right here, and I'm going to choose to make some actions. So I'm going to say player underscore up, and I'm going to add another action, which is player underscore down. Those need to set up the keys for those. So the player up, I'll click plus, and then I'll just press the W key, I think, and then say OK. So that sets the W key to the action for player up. And for player down, I'm going to press the plus here and press S on my keyboard and say OK. So that sets S for the action player down. Save the game here and just click back on the player, so we're changing the player prefab. So if you click on the script right here, you'll open this script up. You've probably done some scripting before. I hope this isn't your first game, but this ready we can ignore. This process is what we want to do. So this is called every single frame. What we want to do is we basically want to move up or down based on the input actions. So we're going to use this if input dot is action pressed. So this is action pressed means that is the action button, is that down, in which point we can, because this is an if statement, then we can do something. So we've got player up and player down. So I'm going to say, I think I'll do the down first. So we want to do a colon at the end and press enter. This if input is action pressed returns, you can see from the help here, true or false. So if this is true, so if it's pressed down, it'll do this next line of code or any other lines that are indented at this level. So what do we want to do? Well, we're going to keep it really easy. We're just going to say position dot y plus equals, that means add on to the position dot y a certain value, and I'm just going to randomly choose 10, and we're going to save that and then go and play the game. So if we go to game and save, the way we can play it is by hitting the run current scene. The other option is to hit this play button while we've got this, and then it'll set game as my default. And because I'm going to be jumping between the different prefabs, I want to probably do that. So I'll have game open in the 2D view here, click play, and then I'll select this as my current starting scene. So every time I hit play, it'll run the game scene and not any of the other ones that I might be on. So if you can see, I'm pressing S now, which is the down, and you can see that the player moves down. Sadly, it goes completely off the screen, and pressing W doesn't do anything because we've not told it to do anything yet. So let's do that. We'll go back to the player prefab, click on the script here, and we'll do the next part. So pretty simple to make it move up. We just say if input dot is action pressed again, and this time we'll say up. And you've probably guessed it. What we need to do is we need to subtract the value of 10 from the position. Oh, nearly forgot. Position dot Y. So all we're doing is if we're pressing up, we'll take 10 off of position.y every frame, and if we're pressing down, we'll put y, make position.y go up by 10 every single frame. Now this is not perfect because we really should be using delta, and we really should use, this one should be a variable up the top, but I want to keep it simple, and this works. So we have one more problem. If we save this and hit play again, you'll see that we can go all the way off the screen at the top and all the way off the screen at the bottom. So how do you think we're going to solve that? So if I look at my game in 2D, we mentioned it before when we were moving this around. We want to basically move down when our value, the Y value of position, is still below 600. So anything below 600 we want to continue moving down. And if we're at 600 or greater, we don't want to move down, so we want to not do that. And it's the same for the up as well, the position.y. So I reckon about the 50-ish there. If we're greater than 50, we can move up. And all you need to do is add that as a condition for that if statement. So back into this player and have a look at the script. So the way you do it is we've got this. So if we're pressing down and we use the keyword and, so it needs to be pressing down and something, and the position dot y is less than 600. So if we're less than 600, we can move down. And the other one is if it's greater than, oh, I forgot to say and the position dot y is greater than 50. So those two things have to happen. So it has to be pressing the button and being the position dot y being less than 600, and the same thing for the up, it needs to be greater than 50. So what happens is when we run this, I've just saved it, we'll press the up, and if you're at 50, I'm pressing the button and it's not going any further, and it's the same for the down. So that's a very, very simple way to keep this inside the bounds of the screen. So you probably worked out that we want to be able to go forward and back as well. So I do want to keep that limited to a few values. So I think again about the 50 on the X, and probably up as far as maybe, I don't know, like 400. So see if you can stop this video and see if you can do this all on your own. The first step, obviously, that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to add the actions. So I want to keep the naming convention with player underscore. So I'm going to say player underscore forward, and I'm going to say a new action of player underscore back, and those are going to be, the forward is going to be the D key, and the back is going to be the A key. So they've got the WASD movement kind of idea. Now that we've got those, stop the video and see if you can write the code to make it move forward and back and limit its values by looking at how we're doing it right now and using something very similar. So I hope you had a go with that. If not, you can pause the video and copy these last 4 lines right here. So this if input.is action just pressed player forward and the position.x is less than 400, and the other one is, and it just does position.x is equal to position.x plus 10, and then it's the back is the exact opposite, except we're checking it to be greater than 50. So when you see this, remember to pause and type this in correctly if you haven't already done so. When we play this, you'll see that it moves a bit fast, but it goes up, down, right and left only as far as those boundaries that we've set up for the checking. And it's a pretty simple movement system, and that's all we really have time for in this video. We'll move on to the shooting in the next one. So stick with it, move on to the next video, and in the next one we're going to be doing some shooting so that we get the lasers to come out, and we'll introduce the concept of instantiating objects.